Picture a medieval queen, rich gowns, a golden circlet on her brow, a seat beside the king at a table loaded with roasted meat and wine, servants bowing, music in the hall, a castle full of people who exist to serve her. That is the image. Now forget it. If you followed a queen through a single day inside a medieval castle in 1200, the first thing you would notice would not be luxury. It would be eyes. Eyes when she wakes, eyes when she dresses, eyes when she prays, eyes when she eats, eyes when she walks through a corridor, eyes when she sits in silence, eyes when she tries to be alone, because she is never alone. A queen in a medieval castle had the finest room, the finest bed, the finest gown, and the highest seat in the hall. She also had almost no privacy, almost no freedom, and almost no power to decide how her own day would begin or end. She did not wake gently. She woke to hands pulling back her curtains, a basin of cold water already waiting, and women standing, ready to dress her body for an audience she did not choose. She did not eat in peace. She ate while the entire hall studied her expression. She did not walk freely. She walked through corridors where guards stepped aside, servants lowered their eyes, and every door she passed through was opened by someone else's hand. Her marriage was not her choice. Her children were not just her children, they were political assets. Her body was not her own, it belonged to the dynasty. And the castle, the grand, imposing castle that looked like power from the road, was often less a home and more a prison made of stone. We are going to spend a full day with her. We will wake in her chamber, stand beside her as she is dressed for the court, walk with her through the chapel, sit at the high table, follow her through the duties and dangers that filled every hour, and end the night behind the heavy door of her room. A room that was never truly private. This is not queenship as fairy tale. It is queenship as confinement, performance, and survival. Before the queen opens her eyes, the castle is already awake around her. Somewhere below in the kitchens, a fire is being stirred back to life. In the stables, a groom speaks quietly to a horse. On the wall walk, a guard shifts his weight from one foot to the other and watches the grey horizon. In the corridor outside her chamber, a lady in waiting sits on a bench, waiting for the first sound of movement from within. The Queen's chamber is the finest room given to a woman in this castle, and it is still a stone room. The shutters are latched against the wind, but the cold has found its way in anyway, through the gaps, through the walls, through the floor. The fire in the hearth burned down during the night, and what remains is ash and a faint glow that gives warmth to nothing beyond arm's reach. A tapestry on the wall shows a hunting scene in faded colour. It is there for insulation as much as beauty. It helps, not enough. The air smells of wood smoke, tallow, damp stone, and the lingering closeness of a room that has been shut since nightfall. She sleeps in a heavy bed, raised off the floor on a wooden frame, curtained on all sides, thick fabric meant to hold whatever warmth the body gives off during the night, layered with linen sheets, woolen blankets, and fur. By the standards of 1200, it is luxurious. By any modern standard, it is a bed in a cold room in a building made of stone, shared with someone who is always watching, because the room is never empty. At the foot of the bed, or on a pallet near the door, one of her ladies sleeps, not as a guest. As a requirement, a queen does not sleep alone. She is attended even in rest, even in darkness, even in the hours when most people feel they belong only to themselves. When the queen stirs, the entire morning begins. The lady on the pallet rises first. She moves to the chest. She lifts the lid quietly. She takes out linen. Another lady enters from the corridor. She has been waiting and goes to the hearth. She kneels and blows on the embers, feeding them with kindling, coaxing fire back from ash. A third draws back the bed curtains and lets in what little grey light the shutters allow. A basin is brought, a jug beside it, a cloth folded on the edge. The water is cold. It has been carried up the stairs by hand. Perhaps some has been heated over a fire below, rarely enough. She washes her face and hands in water that would make a modern person flinch. The cloth is rough linen. The air around her is colder than the bed she has just left. And her ladies stand close, not looking away, because looking away is not their role. There is no quiet moment, no slow waking, no cup of anything in silence, no stretching in private. From the first breath of the day, she is attended, observed, and expected to begin becoming the queen the court needs to see. Then comes dressing. And dressing is not quick. First, a clean linen shift against the skin, then undergarments, then a long gown, wool on most days, sometimes finer cloth if there are visitors or if the day involves ceremony. The fabric is heavy, the layers build, a surcoat over the gown, a belt at the waist, shoes that are better than anything most women in the kingdom will ever touch, but still stiff, still cold, still made for appearance more than for ease. Then comes the part most people imagine incorrectly. Her hair is combed, arranged, and hidden. In 1200, a married woman of rank does not show her hair freely. A linen veil or wimple covers it, wrapped around, pinned into place, secured so that what was once something personal, something her own, becomes something managed by other hands every single morning. By the time she steps from the chamber into the corridor, she has already been washed, dressed, layered, pinned, inspected, and approved. And the day has not yet truly begun. Most modern people would already want to go back to bed. But the walls around her offer more than protection. They also keep her watched. To understand a queen's life in 1200, you must first understand how she arrived in the castle. She did not choose to be there. In almost every case, a queen's marriage was arranged. Not for love, not for companionship, for alliance, for territory, for peace between two families, two regions, or two kingdoms that needed each other more than they needed her consent. She may have been promised as a child. She may have met her husband days before the wedding. She may have been sent across borders, across the sea, away from every person she had known, to live in a castle she had never seen, among people who spoke a language she was still learning, married to a man whose affections were a political calculation rather than a personal one. This was normal, expected, unquestioned. Her value was understood clearly by everyone around her. She was the bridge between two powers. She carried the future of the dynasty in her body. She was expected to produce heirs, sons specifically, and her failure to do so was not treated as misfortune. It was treated as a political crisis. From the day she arrived, her position was conditional. If she bore sons, she was secure. Her household was maintained. Her influence was permitted. Her voice reached the king's ear, at least occasionally. If she did not, or if the children did not survive, the court began to shift around her. Whispers moved through corridors. Allies became cautious. The king's attention drifted, and when a king's attention drifted, a queen's safety drifted with it. She held a title that placed her above almost every other woman in the kingdom. But the title came with chains that were invisible and permanent. She could not leave the castle freely. Travel required the king's permission, an escort, a reason judged acceptable by the household and the court. She could not write letters without the knowledge of clerks who served the king first and her second. She could not receive visitors without scrutiny. She could not form friendships that looked too close to political alliances without raising suspicion. Her ladies-in-waiting were companions, yes, but they were also witnesses, chosen not only for their suitability as attendants, but for their family's loyalty, their connections, and their willingness to report what they saw. A queen was never truly alone with her thoughts. There was always someone in the room whose presence served a purpose beyond comfort. Even her body was subject to inspection in ways that would horrify a modern person. If the king needed confirmation that the queen was pregnant, the court needed it too. If the queen was ill, it mattered politically. If she gained or lost favor with the king in private, it became public knowledge before the next meal. The boundary between her personal life and her political role did not exist. She lived inside a system designed to use her, protect her only insofar as she was useful, and watch her constantly to ensure she remained so. A queen in 1200 did not rule, she endured, and the endurance was wrapped in silk and called privilege. If you saw a queen in 1200, you saw her clothing before you saw her face. That was deliberate. In a world without photographs, without broadcasts, without any way to project power at a distance, clothing was the message. And a queen's clothing said everything the court needed to hear before she opened her mouth. The gown was the foundation. In 1200, a queen's gown was built in layers, each one carrying weight, literal and symbolic. Against the skin, a linen chemise. Clean, white or near white, changed as often as the household could manage. Linen was the closest thing to comfort in the medieval wardrobe, and its quality signaled wealth immediately. The finer the weave, the higher the status. Over the chemise came the main gown, long, reaching the floor, fitted through the torso, looser below. Wool was the most common material for everyday wear, but not the rough wool of a peasant's tunic. A queen's wool was dyed, deep reds, blues, greens, colors that were expensive because the dyes themselves were expensive. Some gowns used finer fabrics, silk imported from the East, or blends that combined warmth with a sheen that caught the light of torch and candle. Over the gown, a surcoat or mantle. This outer layer served as both warmth and display. It might be lined with fur, vair, miniver, or ermine, depending on the season and the occasion. Fur was not decoration, it was insulation, rank, and diplomacy compressed into a single garment. At the waist, a belt or girdle, often decorated, sometimes carrying a small purse, a set of keys, or devotional items. The belt was practical, but like everything else, it was also visible. What hung from a queen's belt told the court what she considered important enough to keep on her person. Then came the veil. A queen in 1200 covered her hair. This was not optional. A married woman of high rank wore a linen veil or wimple that concealed the hair and framed the face. The fabric was fine. The arrangement was careful. But the effect was the same. Her hair, one of the most personal, most visible markers of individuality, was hidden, managed, made appropriate. The veil said, she belongs to the court, she belongs to her husband, she belongs to the expectations placed upon her. Jewelry completed the message, a circlet on the brow, brooches fastening the mantle, rings on the fingers. These were not personal adornments chosen for pleasure, they were diplomatic tools. A brooch given by an ally, a ring that signaled a family connection, a circlet that reminded every person in the hall that this woman stood closer to the crown than anyone except the king himself. Getting dressed was not vanity, it was armor. Every morning the queen's body was transformed from a private person into a public statement. By the time she stepped from the chamber into the corridor, her gown, her veil, her jewels, and her posture had already spoken on her behalf. The court read her appearance the way a general reads a battlefield, looking for signals, weakness, alliance, and intent. And the weight of it was real. The layers of wool, the stiffness of formal dress, the pins holding the veil, the heaviness of a fur-lined mantle. She carried her status on her body all day long, and by evening the relief of removing it was one of the few private comforts the castle allowed. Clothes were not just what she wore, they were the first wall of her confinement. After dressing, the Queen's day did not open into freedom. It opened into a schedule that belonged to everyone but her. The first obligation was prayer. She walked from her chamber through a guarded corridor attended by her ladies toward the chapel. The passage was stone, the air was cold, servants lowered their eyes as she passed. A guard stepped aside. The chapel door was opened for her, not by her. Inside, candlelight on stone, a cross at the altar, a chaplain already waiting. The morning service was brief but required, not because faith was optional, but because queenship in 1200 rested on divine legitimacy. She was queen because God permitted it. And so the day began by acknowledging God, whether she felt devout that morning or not. After chapel, the first real business began. A queen in 1200 was not passive. The image of a queen sitting idle in a tower waiting for the king to return is a fantasy invented centuries later. In reality, she managed. She oversaw sections of the household. She approved expenditures for her own chambers and attendants. She received reports from servants about the condition of the stores under her authority. She supervised the women's quarters, the spinning, the sewing, the preparation of cloth and garments. She kept accounts, or had a clerk keep them, on her behalf, and she reviewed them. If the king was away, at war, at court elsewhere, on progress through his lands, the queen's responsibilities expanded. She might govern in his absence. She might receive messengers. She might make decisions that affected the castle and the surrounding holdings. She might write letters sealed with her own seal, letters that carried weight because they came from the crown's closest representative. But even when the king was present, her duties filled the day. She received visitors, wives of other lords, churchmen, emissaries bearing gifts or requests. Every visit was political. Every conversation was noted. She could not be too warm to the wrong guest or too cold to the right one. Hospitality was not generosity. It was statecraft performed with wine and bread. She attended to her children, though attended carried a different meaning than it does now. Noble children in 1200 were raised by nurses, tutors, and household officers. The Queen saw her children, certainly. She supervised their education and their placement. But the intimate, daily closeness that modern parents take for granted was not part of a queen's routine. Her children were heirs first and children second, and the household was structured accordingly. Between audiences and accounts, she might walk in the enclosed garden, if the castle had one. A small space within the walls, planted with herbs, perhaps a few flowers, bounded by stone on every side. It was the closest thing to open air that many queens experienced regularly. Even there, she was not alone. Her ladies walked with her. A guard stood at the entrance. The garden was fresh air, inside a cage. She ate her midday meal in the hall, or, if the day allowed, in her private solar. the food was better than what most people in the kingdom would ever taste, but the meal, like everything else, was observed. Who served her, what she ate, how much, whether she spoke, whether she smiled. The court consumed her behavior along with the bread. By the middle of the afternoon, she had prayed, managed, received, supervised, eaten, and spoken carefully for hours. And the day was only half finished. If this kind of reconstruction is something you value, subscribing to Walter Reconstructs History is the best way to make sure the next one happens. Every video takes weeks of research, writing, and production, and your subscription tells me that this work matters. If you have been watching this far, you already care about history done properly. That means a lot. Now, let us step into the most public performance of the Queen's day. The evening meal in the Great Hall was the most visible moment of a Queen's day. The hall filled slowly. Trestle tables were set, benches dragged into position, rushes on the floor released the smell of herbs and old food. Torches were lit along the walls, throwing uneven light across stone and timber. Smoke thickened near the ceiling. Servants moved between the tables carrying bread, jugs of ale, platters of meat. At the far end of the hall on the dais, the high table waited. The Queen sat beside the King, or if the King was absent, she sat at the center of the high table herself, the highest ranking person in the room. Either way, her position was elevated, physically and symbolically. She looked down over the hall. The hall looked up at her. The food was rich by medieval standards: roasted meat, mutton, pork, venison if the hunt had been good, bread made from fine wheat flour, fish on days when the church required it, cheese, pastries, fruit when the season allowed, wine brought from far away, spices that had crossed continents to reach this table, pepper, cinnamon, ginger, used sparingly because each grain represented cost. The meal was served in courses, dishes arrived in sequence, servants poured wine, a cupbearer stood near, watching the Queen's cup, ready to refill before she asked. A carver cut the meat. A taster may have tasted first, not always for poison, but because the ritual itself projected caution and status. It looked like luxury, but every gesture at the high table was political. Where the Queen placed her attention mattered. If she spoke warmly to a visiting noble's wife, the court noticed. If she ignored someone, the court noticed that too. If she laughed too freely, it was discussed. If she seemed withdrawn, it was interpreted. If she touched the King's arm, it signalled favour. If she did not, it signalled distance. The Queen did not simply eat at the banquet, she performed. Below the dais, the rest of the household ate and watched. Knights, clerks, household officers, servants. Their eyes moved between their plates and the high table. The Queen's face was studied the way a weather vane is studied for signs of what was coming next. Even the food itself carried meaning. A queen who ate well suggested health and contentment. A queen who picked at her food suggested illness, unhappiness, or, most dangerously, pregnancy. And pregnancy in a royal household was never a private matter. It was the single most important political event the Queen's body could produce. After the meal, there might be music, a minstrel with a stringed instrument, a song, a recitation. These moments of entertainment were genuine, and they were among the few occasions when the atmosphere in the hall softened. But even here, the Queen's reaction was observed. Enjoyment was permitted. Excess was not. The tables were cleared. The hall emptied slowly. Dogs settled near the hearth, servants folded linen, torches burned lower, and the queen withdrew from the hall the way she had entered, attended, observed, and never truly alone. Even at dinner, she was never truly free. Behind the ceremony, behind the gowns and the banquets and the chapel prayers, there was a fear that never fully left. It lived in the background of every day. It sharpened at night. It followed her from chamber to hall to garden and back. The greatest fear was childbirth. A queen was expected to bear children. This was not a hope, it was a requirement. The dynasty depended on heirs. The kingdom's stability depended on succession. Her entire position, her household, her attendance, her influence, her safety depended on her ability to produce sons who survived. And childbirth in 1200 was dangerous. There were no surgeons, as modern medicine understands them, no anesthesia, no sterile instruments, no blood transfusions, no way to intervene if the birth went wrong in ways that today would be resolved in minutes. A queen gave birth in her chamber, attended by midwives and her ladies. The room was closed, shutters drawn, the air heavy with candle smoke and the smell of herbs meant to ease the process. Prayers were said. Relics might be brought close. The chaplain waited outside. Many queens survived, many did not. The mortality was real, and it was known. Every woman in the castle understood it. Every queen who entered her confinement the weeks before birth, when she withdrew from public life, entered it knowing that the room she lay in might be the last room she saw. And even if the queen survived, the child might not. Infant mortality in 1200 was devastating. Fever, infection, weakness, illness. Children died in numbers that would be unthinkable today. A queen might bear 6 children and bury 3 before they reached the age of 5. Each loss was personal grief and political failure, tangled together in a way that allowed no space for private mourning. The court did not pause for a dead infant. It recalculated. Beyond childbirth, the queen lived with a different kind of danger, political danger. She existed at the center of a court that was never still. Factions moved around her. Nobles sought her favor or worked against it. The king's advisors watched her influence and measured whether it served their interests or threatened them. If she became too powerful, too visible, too close to certain allies, the court pushed back. If she became too weak, too isolated, too far from the king's attention, her position eroded. Intrigue was not dramatic in the way modern stories portray it. It was quiet, a shifted glance, a letter not delivered, a lady-in-waiting replaced without explanation, an invitation withdrawn, a conversation repeated to the wrong person, a suggestion made to the king at the right moment by the right voice. These small movements could reshape a queen's world in weeks. And then there was the king himself. A queen's safety depended more than anything else on the king's favor. If he valued her, she was protected. Her household was funded, her children were cared for, her voice was heard, at least within the private chambers. If his favor shifted to another woman, to another political concern, to another alliance that made her family inconvenient, her world contracted. Queens were set aside, not always through dramatic repudiation, but through slow withdrawal of attention, resources, and proximity. A queen who lost the king's favor might find herself moved to a smaller residence attended by fewer ladies, visited less often, consulted never. She was still queen in name, but the name became an empty room. War added another layer of fear. When the king rode to war, the queen waited. She waited for messengers who might bring news of victory or news that would change everything. If the king died in battle, her future depended on the mercy of whoever came next, a new king, a regent, a faction that may or may not see value in keeping her alive, housed, and acknowledged. If enemies took the castle, the queen's fate was uncertain. She might be ransomed. She might be imprisoned. She might be used as a bargaining tool, her body and her bloodline traded for peace or advantage. The walls that kept her confined in peacetime might not keep her safe in war. And beneath all of this, constant and quiet, was the ordinary threat of disease, fever, infection, illness that arrived without warning and left without explanation, if it left at all. Medicine in 1200 was a mixture of herbal knowledge, religious faith, and guesswork. Bloodletting was common. Prayer was prescribed alongside poultices. If a queen fell seriously ill, the best the castle could offer was rest, warmth, broth, and hope. She knew this. Every woman in the castle knew it. The fear was not one single threat. It was a web of threats that surrounded her always. Childbirth, disease, intrigue, war, the king's affection, the court's calculation, and the knowledge that her position, no matter how elevated, rested on conditions she could not fully control. She wore a crown. But the crown did not make her safe. It made her visible. And in a medieval castle, visibility was its own kind of danger. By the time evening settled over the castle, the truth of the queen's life became hardest to ignore. She had moved through the entire day, from chamber to chapel, from chapel to hall, from hall to solar, from solar to garden, from garden to banquet and back again, and she had never once stepped outside the walls. Not because the weather was bad, not because there was danger on the roads, but because queens, in practice, rarely left. The castle was her world. Its corridors were her corridors. Its courtyard was her sky. Its garden, if she had one, was her countryside. The walls that rose around her were not boundaries she could negotiate. They were the fixed edges of her life, and they moved only when the king decided they should move. If the court relocated to another castle, another manor, another city, she travelled with it, under escort, along a route chosen by others, at a pace set by others, to a destination decided by others. The journey itself was not freedom. It was movement within the same structure, carried from one set of walls to the next. Inside the castle, her movements were known at all times. Her ladies accompanied her. Guards stood at every passage. Servants saw where she went, when she went, and who she saw. If she wished to speak to someone privately, true privacy was almost impossible. There was always a door half open, a lady nearby, a clerk within earshot, a guard whose presence meant that someone would know. Her correspondence was managed. Letters she wrote passed through hands that could read them before they were sealed. Letters she received arrived through the same channels. If the king wished to know what she had written or received, the system made that knowledge available to him without effort. Her friendships were watched. A queen who became too close to a particular noble family invited suspicion. A queen who corresponded too frequently with a foreign court invited worse. Even her devotional life, her prayers, her charitable giving, her relationship with the church was observed for signs of influence, alliance, or independence that exceeded what the court judged appropriate. She could not walk through the gatehouse and ride into the countryside alone. She could not visit her own family without permission. She could not choose her own companions without approval. She could not decide where to sleep, what to eat, when to travel, or how to spend a single day without the invisible structure of the court shaping every choice around her. The castle protected her from the world, but it also kept the world away from her. At night, this truth was sharpest. The fire burned low, the chamber grew cold, the candles guttered. Beyond the shuttered windows, the country stretched away in darkness. Fields, forests, rivers, villages, roads she had never walked, skies she had only seen framed by stone. Her ladies settled onto their pallets. The guard took his place outside the door. The sounds of the castle, footsteps, wind, a horse shifting below, a door closing somewhere in the keep, filled the silence with the familiar rhythm of a world that held her in place. She lay in the best bed in the castle, and the bed was still inside the walls. To the world outside, she was a symbol of power. Her gown said wealth. Her circlet said authority. Her presence at the high table said that the kingdom was ordered, stable, and blessed by God. When she walked through the hall, men bowed. When she entered the chapel, heads lowered. When her name was spoken in distant courts, it carried the weight of alliance, territory, and dynastic promise. But behind the crown, her life was defined by duty, fear, and walls she could rarely escape. She woke each morning in a cold room, washed in cold water, and dressed in layers chosen not for comfort, but for message. She prayed because the crown required it. She managed a household that served her and monitored her in equal measure. She ate in public, spoke in public, and smiled in public because the alternative, silence, withdrawal, visible unhappiness, carried consequences she could not afford. She bore children in a room sealed against the world, knowing that the room might seal against her too. She navigated a court that measured her value daily, adjusted its loyalty accordingly, and could dismantle her position with the quiet efficiency of servants clearing a table after a meal. She lived with the knowledge that her safety depended on one man's favor, and that favor could shift for reasons beyond her control. A new alliance, a new ambition, a new face, a new political calculation that made her less necessary than she had been the day before. And through all of this, she endured. Not because endurance was easy, but because it was the only option the castle offered. The next time you imagine a medieval queen, do not imagine freedom. Imagine a woman standing in the finest room in the castle, dressed in the finest gown in the kingdom, surrounded by attendants, guarded by soldiers, watched by the court, and unable to open the door and walk away. That was queenship in 1200, more prison than palace. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this kind of deep historical reconstruction, please subscribe to Walter Reconstructs History. I make videos that bring lost castles, vanished worlds, and decisive turning points back to life in a way that is simple, visual, and grounded in real history. And if there is another queen, king, castle, or forgotten world you want to see reconstructed next, leave it in the comments. What should I reconstruct next on Walter Reconstructs History?